Okay, let's talk about how to solve and graph quadratic inequalities. And we're going to be using this as our example problem. And I'm going to go over the kind of sub skills you need to know in order to do this type of problem. But you certainly need to do this type of problem in algebra. And obviously, we're dealing with quadratic inequalities. So hopefully, you've studied inequalities before, especially linear inequalities, and learned how to graph them. And you know something about quadratic inequalities and how to graph quadratic functions, namely parabolas. But we're going to cover all of this. So if you're still, if you're not quite sure you have the background in order to do this problem, just stick with me for a few minutes and you will definitely learn something about solving quadratic inequalities. But first, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John. I'm the founder of TabletClass Math. I'm also a middle and high school math teacher, and over several years, I've constructed what I like to believe is one of the best online math help programs there is. Of course, I'll let you be the judge of that. If you want to check out my math help program, you can follow the link in the description of this video. Well, basically, I have 100 plus different math courses. I have all the big courses like pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, college algebra. I'm going to be launching my pre-calculus course here soon. All my courses take years to build because they're extremely comprehensive, and I really teach you not only really teach you about the topic, I show you how to solve thousands of problems, but I also do a lot in the area of test preparation. So if you're studying for tests like the GED, SAT, ACT, a teacher certification exam, maybe the Accuplacer, ALEX, GRE, GMAT, there's a ton of reasons why people study mathematics. So you don't have to be taking a math class, but you may need to really kind of up your math skills in order to pass your particular exam. So you can go to my site and check out my course catalog, but I likely have your exam. If I don't, drop me a line in the contact form and I'll see what I can do to help you out. I also do a lot with independent learners like homeschoolers. So if you're a homeschooler, I have a great homeschool learning system. And then obviously, I help those that are just struggling in their class. So if you're taking Algebra 1 or college algebra, for instance, and you just, are frustrated, well, I could certainly help you out. But one thing you need to do to help yourself out is take great math notes. Over decades of teaching mathematics, nothing's more important. And kind of my rule of thumb is those students who take great math notes almost always have great math grades, and then the reverse is true. Those students who think they don't have to take notes, they just look at the teacher and just, hope that what they see sticks in their brain. That's a big mistake. I've made this mistake when I was a student until I figured out that, that's not going to work. So if you're struggling in mathematics and you're interested in doing well in math, and obviously you must be if you're watching this video, look at your notes, okay? There's always room for improvement, and if you're not even taking notes, that's where you first want to start. But in the meantime, as you're starting to improve your notes, you need something to study from. So I offer detailed comprehensive math notes to include pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, and trigonometry. You can find links to those notes in the description of this video. Okay, so we're going to do this particular problem, but let's talk about some of the kind of fundamental skills you need in order to solve and graph quadratic inequalities. So the first thing is you need to know how to graph a quadratic function. Okay, so I'll just kind of write this down here. Quadratic function. Namely, you need to know how to graph parabolas. Now, if you are still struggling in this area, on my playlist, on my YouTube channel, I have tons of videos on graphing parabolas, finding the vertex, all this stuff here, the vertex, and there's a ton of things here you need to know about graphing parabolas or graphing quadratic functions. It's not that difficult, but there's a lot of sub-skills. So for quadratic inequalities, you need to know how to graph parabolas. What I'm going to do here in this particular problem is just show you how to graph a basic, kind of real easy parabola. So we're not going to get too fancy because I want you to concentrate on the steps for quadratic inequalities. Now, the second thing is after we can graph the particular parabola in question or the quadratic function, its respective graph, we need to know that if we're dealing with a less than or greater than, okay, the graph is going to be a dotted line, okay, or a dotted curve or parabola in this case. Now, if you're dealing with a less than equal to or greater than equal to, it's going to be solid, okay? So these are the same steps that you would employ for doing something like this. Let's say you have y is greater than or equal to 2x plus 1. this is a linear inequality, okay, you would kind of graph this line. You would think of this as the line y equals 2x plus 1. Graph the line, and then here, because this is a greater than or equal to, it would be a solid line, okay? If it was a just greater than, it would be a dotted line, right? And we'll talk about the reasons behind that in a second. All right, so after you know how to graph the function and you understand what these inequality symbols mean in terms of either a solid line or a dotted line, the third thing that we need to do is kind of test a point. We're going to test a point. Now, what kind of point am I talking about? I'm talking about testing an XY point. Now, we always want to test for the point 0, 0, okay, unless the graph is going through the origin. In other words, it's going through the actual point 0, 0. If it's going through the point 0, 0, then you need to test another point. But if your graph is not crossing through the origin, then we're going to test for 0, 0, and that's going to determine where the true or false region is, the solution region. Okay, so you're going to see how this is all put together, but this is not that difficult. But we're going to follow these 3 steps, okay, and again, you're going to want to practice this. After this particular problem, I'm going to do additional practice, but this will definitely kind of show you the main steps to approach a quadratic inequality. Okay, so here we go. Here is our problem. So we have y is less than negative x squared plus 3. Okay, so what does that graph look like? Well, a good idea is to start with the graph y equals x squared. So let's just do a quick review of that. So y equals x squared would be a parabola. Okay, here's our parabola, and it just goes to the origin just like this. Okay, now we have plus 3. Now I'm going to get to this negative sign here in a second. So what does this plus 3 do? Well, this is going to push the graph up 3 on the y-axis. So let's go and take our little parabola. Let's see if we can do it like this. Yeah, there we go. So this is more or less kind of what's going on. So we push the graph up 3. So this is 1, 2, 3. Okay, so far so good. This is y equals x squared plus 3. Now, this little negative here, when we're talking about parabolas, you have, if it's x squared, if this is a positive x squared, you're going to have an upward or happy parabola. If it's a negative x squared, you're going to have a down or sad parabola, okay? So again, I teach this on how to graph parabolas. If you really, really want to master this stuff, you probably want to check out my Algebra 1 course, but I have a lot of videos in my YouTube channel in my algebra playlist. Okay, so that means that at this point here, if I put a negative on this, this needs to flip. So instead of being an up parabola like this, I got to go ahead and make it a down parabola. Okay, now when I do this, okay, it's going from this point here, that's the vertex, it's going to go like this. But when I actually draw this out, notice I'm dealing with the less than, so it's going to be a dotted parabola. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go ahead and do it now. Okay, so there's 3, and we'll use white as our color here. So we go like this, okay, and you got to be kind of careful with this. That's why always you want to work with pencil, okay, when you're doing this stuff. You never want to use pen in mathematics, right, because you're going to be making a lot of mistakes. Okay, so here you go. So this would be a good representation of the first 2 steps to solve a quadratic inequality. Okay, so we have our parabola here. Now, if I was going to graph this thing, this would be a solid line. And then this point here, if you wanted to put in an additional point, this would be the point 0, 3. Okay. All right, now at this point, hopefully this makes sense to you. And you're saying, okay, I get it, I get it. Well, we need to now determine the solution region. So like any inequality, we just don't have one point. Okay, we're going to have a region, and you're going to see here in a second. So let's test the point 0, 0. Remember I told you we want to test the point 0, 0. Now what does that mean? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to, remember this is x and y, all right? X is 0 and y is 0. We're going to plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. Then we're going to determine if we're dealing with a true or false statement. So let me scoot this over here, and I'll show you how this works. Not difficult. All right, so let's test 0, 0. So we're going to plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. So we get 0 is less than negative 0 squared plus 3. And then obviously this simplifies down to 0 is less than 0 plus 3. And probably everyone could see, oh, this is just going to simplify down to 0 is less than 3. Okay, so when I plug in 0, 0, I get the statement 0 is less than 3. Now I need you to kind of look at this statement and ask, is this a true or false statement? Is 0 in fact less than 3? The last time I checked, yes it is. That's a true statement. Okay, 0 is in fact less than 3. So we need to go to where 0 is at on the graph. 0, 0 is where on the graph? It's right here, right? It's the origin. Okay. So here's how this works. If you look at the parabola, we have an inside region and we have an outside region, okay? Let's just take a line, for example. If I had a line on a graph, one side is true, the other side is false, okay? All we need to do is test one side of the line. I'm dealing with a parabola, but if I was to graph a linear equation, if I find the true side, then I don't need to do anything else. If I find the false side, the other side by default is false. So here we found the true side. If one point is true in this region, all of these points are true. So what you're going to do, you're going to graph the solution region. So we're going to graph inside of the parabola. So we're going to do it like this. Okay, we're going to shade this way. Okay. Now this means that all of this right here is the solution to this quadratic inequality. Okay, everything on the outside right here is not. That's the false side. Okay, now if we tested a point here and it was false, then the inside must be true. So just remember, all we have to do is just test one region, and whether it's true or false, we'll know where the answer is at. Okay, so that's basically it. But let's take a value that we know is in here. Looks like let's test -1. Let's test -1, -6. Okay, let's test -1, -6. And we're going to test this. It looks like this is in our solution region. Okay, I don't have this on the actual graph, but let's test it in here. I believe if it is, in fact, in our solution region, this should be a true statement. So let's go ahead and test that. So we have y is less than -x squared plus 3. Okay, so remember, this is x and this is y. We're just testing a point in here just to kind of satisfy that, in fact, this is the way this works. Okay, so here, y will be -6. Okay, right here. Remember, this is our -6. That's y. And then we're just substituting it in. So that's going to be less than -1, right, for x. We're going to square that plus 3. All right, now let's go ahead and simplify this. This is -6 is less than -1 squared is going to be -1 squared is +1. So this will be a -1. Okay, hopefully you'll see why that's the case. Plus 3. Let's continue this over here. So I get -6 is less than -1 plus 3 is in fact 2. So now let's ask ourselves right here, is -6 less than 2? In fact, that is true. Okay, so you can see this statement's true, right? That's true, and any point inside this region will be true. Likewise, a point outside this region, let's test a point that we know for sure is outside this region. Let's test the point, let's say, let's look like this is like, say, 5, 3, the point 5, 3. Okay, let's test that point. And this should generate a false statement. Okay, so let's see if that's the case. All right, so we have y is 5, I'm sorry, x is 5, excuse me, and y is 3. Okay, so here we have 3. We're going to substitute for y is less than -x is 5 squared plus 3. So I have 3 is less than 5 squared is 25. That's -25 plus 3. So I have 3 is less than -22. Okay, and hopefully I didn't make any mistakes. But at this point, let's ask the question, is this true or false? Is 3 less than -22? No, -22 is a lower number than +3. Remember, on a number line, here's 0, here's -22 way over here, and here's 3. -22 is less than 3. 3 is not less than negative 22. That's false. And that's what we expected. Okay, this is in the false region. So this is how all these inequalities work, whether we talk about quadratic inequalities or linear inequalities. So to kind of review again, I'm going to wrap this up. You need to know how to graph these parabolas, and that's a separate skill set, okay? And it's not overly complicated, so you need to understand how to find the vertex and all the different shifts and whatnot. Again, you can check out all my videos on parabolas and quadratic functions in my algebra playlist, or just sign up for my algebra course. You'll really learn it. And then you need to understand these different dotted lines and straight lines. Actually, let me talk about that real quick. What does the dotted line mean? Okay, well, the dotted line means this, that points that are in fact on the dotted line, like this point right here, okay, 0, 3 is on the actual border. Points that are on the border of the graph are not part of the solution, so that would be false. If this was a solid graph like this, any points that are on the actual graph would in fact be part of the solution set, okay? All right, so that's a quick overview of quadratic inequalities, and hopefully this was like, oh, okay, I get it. It's not that difficult, and you get a big smiley face, and that's what how you want to approach math, one skill at a time. If you look at this, it looks complicated. It is complicated if you're trying to learn everything all together at once. Math, you just can't do that way. It's like that old phrase, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you learn math? One skill at a time. That's why you got to be paying attention and, really writing down all these skills in your notes. Okay, once you write things down, you got to constantly review and practice. So watching this video is a good start, but again, if you don't practice this stuff, then it's not going to stick. All right. So if this video helped you out in some way, please consider smashing that like button. That always helps me out. And if you're new to my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing. Been on YouTube for a long time, have hundreds and hundreds of videos on my channel organized in playlists from basic to advanced, but my best math help will always be found in my math program. Okay, so with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your mathematics adventures. Thank you for your time, and have a great day.